Thank you, and good afternoon. I understand I do have the midnight shift, and so I'll try and keep this quite quick. Also realized this morning that people don't wear ties to ensure tech functions, but I decided to just go for it and keep it on. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for being here. Thanks to DIA. I come from an organization which you might have heard of. It's called Discovery, pioneers of the vitality model. Where Discovery is today, well, 25 years ago, it launched in South Africa in the health insurance industry and pioneered the use of behavioral wellness linked to insurance. Today, Discovery is a global insurance organization offering insurance on multiple lines, from car to home to short-term to investments, now into banking as well. We have a primary market in South Africa, the UK, and China, and the US, and we have partnerships with great insurers all over the world. Currently, run about 19 million customers, €1 billion in gross revenue, and we have just over 15 million customers globally. But all of this, all these companies sit on a chassis, you can see there at the bottom, called Vitality. Now, before I talk to you about Vitality, a little bit more around Discovery, at the core of the business, there is a very simple why, how, and what we do. And it's clear wherever you go in the organization, everyone knows this. This is why we do it: make people healthier and enhance and protect their lives. How we do it is called the Vitality Shared Value Insurance Model, and I'll talk to you more a little bit about this later. And what we do is insurance, banking, and investments. So before I tell you more about the model, I'd like to quickly highlight three global trends that, in my opinion, are shaping and potentially disrupting insurers globally. The first is an ever-changing nature of risk. I'm sure you're all familiar with this, but 30 years ago, the nature of risk was all about infections and pre-existing conditions, and used to underwrite according to that basis. Fast forward 30 years, and now risk is purely behavioral, diseases of lifestyle. Things such as exercise, smoking, nutrition, alcohol abuse explain the majority of deaths and majority of disease burden. We often refer to the 3-4-50 model as a way to explain it. 3 behaviors explaining 50% of deaths. So when you think about it from a health and life insurance point of view, the nature of risk is not the same. We also know this. You saw telematics presentations earlier today. 80% of all accidents are a result of driver behavior. So the risk is purely behavioral. The second trend I'd like to talk about is that of technology. Now, it sort of supports the nature of risk that I just explained to you now. Technology has become a complete enabler of insurance, specifically the proliferation of wearable devices. So we can now, from an insurance point of view, track people on a more granular basis, on a more real-time basis. You saw Viva Metrica earlier demonstrate just that. And then lastly, the last trend is that of social responsibility. Increasingly, insurers are being held up to say, what are you doing socially? What are you doing for the community? Are you bettering our lives, or are you just focused on profits? And those three trends are overlapping to put a lot of pressure on insurers, and I think could potentially disrupt the insurance landscape. And it's these trends that have sort of informed the Vitality Shared Value Insurance Model, and it is actually quite simple. By making members healthier, the insurer benefits through lower claims, lower healthcare costs, lower morbidity, lower life claims. By making people healthier and getting them to engage, you also reduce lapses, you result in positive selective lapsation, and all in all these factors come together to give an actuarial surplus to the insurer. But what the insurer then does is takes this actuarial surplus and feeds that back to the member in the form of incentives to drive behavior change. And you can see it creates a wonderful loop where the member gets healthier, the insurer profits, and the insurer rewards the member for that behavior change, which is good for the member, good for the insurer, and good for society. And this has been applied to driving for exactly the same methodology, to managing your finances, and is called the Vitality Shared Value Insurance Model. Now, this model has been taken from South Africa and been applied to many adjacent industries, and we've now taken that model over the last 8 or so years globally, and today Vitality is the world's largest behavioral insurance platform with over 15 million members sitting on it. We are lucky to partner with great insurance companies such as AIA, Generali, you saw earlier, John Hancock, Manulife, Ping On in China, Discovery in South Africa, Vitality in the UK, Sumitomo it'll coming on recently, or in the next month or so in Japan. All these insurers making use of the Vitality model for the consumer proposition. The model or the platform is growing at a rapid rate. We're currently adding roughly 200,000 new members to this model every single month. It's built on a foundation of 40 million life years of health, life, and insurance data linked to wellness behavior. To give you a bit more granularity, in every single minute, this platform tracks roughly 1,000 activities of our insurance clients and picks up about 50 biometric readings every single minute. And these numbers just continue to grow as we go along. And what my role is, and a part of the Global Vitality Network, is to come up with partners and programs and products, as well as technology solutions and data infrastructure to support this platform and help our partners do better in their markets. Today, I'd like to talk to you about a particular behavior, and this is one of many, but I think it's probably the most exciting one, and a particular application of the Vitality model. And that is our focus on exercise. We at Vitality are sort of obsessed with exercise for a number of reasons. I think the data sort of speaks for itself. We've got quite a lot of data on exercise, and we've been very successful at encouraging people to exercise more. But a few interesting things I'd like to tell you is that exercise is often the trigger to get people to live a healthier lifestyle. So once we know from data, as soon as someone starts exercising, they tend to eat healthier, undertake preventative measures, do more online assessments, just generally live a healthier life. So exercise is often the precursor for someone changing their behavior. At the same time, from an insurance point of view, exercise is probably the biggest predictor of mortality risk. We know from our data that people who are physically active exhibit 50% of the mortality rate of the average population. And if you tier that by how active they actually are, it actually drops down to less than 70%, or 70% less than the average mortality rate. We've also looked at our healthcare data, and we've been able to track people over time, and we saw that by making people more active based on their current state, and to make them more active, we've seen a massive reduction in their healthcare costs, both in terms of frequency and severity in terms of the hospital stays. And it goes both ways. Once people stop exercising and decrease, it actually reverses and the hospital costs go up. So the case for exercise is very, very big for us, and this is sort of our focus. So roughly 2 years ago, we entered into a collaboration with Apple, and we launched a benefit called Vitality Active Rewards with Apple Watch. And I'm here today to tell you or show you, as the first audience, some of the initial results out of that particular intervention in insurance. The user journey for the Vitality Active Rewards with Apple Watch is actually quite simple. As a client, as an insurance client, you get an Apple Watch upfront for a small activation fee, and you enter into a contract with the insurance company to repay that Apple Watch over a 24-month period in equal installments. The trick is that repayment will reduce to zero if you are physically active within that month. We set you exercise goals every week, so we give you a weekly exercise goal. It's personalized to you, so it's age-rated depending where you are. It's also adjusted for people with critical illness. It's dynamic in the sense that it keeps on challenging you. It steps up every single week to keep you pushing yourself a little bit harder, and it dynamically adjusts downwards when you stop engaging. And then lastly is we give you rewards at the end of every week, micro rewards for just being active. Things like coffee, smoothies. You even in some countries can make a donation to a charity in every week. And these all are items that drive engagement. But the one I'd like to talk to you about is the Apple Watch component of that, and that is reducing your monthly payments to zero by being active. Now you might wonder, and we often get this question, why not let people buy the Apple Watch themselves and give them money back at the end of every month? It's essentially the same thing. Well, mathematically it is, but if you think about it from a behavioral point of view, it's a lot less effective. And the reason for that is the concept of loss aversion. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this concept, but it basically says we like to avoid losses. So technically, we are much more likely, we derive a lot less benefit, or we feel a lot worse for a loss of equal amount to that of a gain of that same amount. So basically, we like to avoid losses. Now, if you think about the Apple Watch benefit, we give someone the watch for free and tell them that they're going to incur a loss every single month to the value of that repayment. What you see is that people engage dramatically. People change their behavior just to avoid that loss. A very powerful tool for creating behavior change in insurance. And I'd like to share with you some of the results that we've done. And we've launched this in a number of countries. I just have 3 here because these are the 3 most mature ones. I'd like to caveat it that the results are quite early days, given that, that the average duration by policy weighting is actually less than 2 years. To give you some results, the behavior change in terms of exercise has been absolutely dramatic. If you look at South Africa, the US, the UK, it's between a 35 to 100% increase in physical activity. Now, this is not just because we're tracking the members now. We've actually been tracking the members before using other devices, gyms, and other events. So this is a pure behavior change tracked over that period. It's also interesting to see, as you see at the bottom there, you look at the distribution of activity and how people are exercising. We've actually shifted that distribution, but made the peak at the front, where people are not exercising. We've got a large group of people who never exercised or exercised very little to start engaging as well. From an insurance point of view, this is quite a big behavior change. The next question comes out, and this often happens from a vitality point of view, we also get this question, is that when you give someone an incentive, it usually works for a few weeks, then they drop off. We know from studies around wearable devices that when people get a wearable device, they love it, they engage with it, they increase their activity, and then slowly engagement drops off over time. But given the nature of this benefit over a 24-month period, we simply did not see that. This is basically the activity levels of people over time, showing that those people with the active rewards of Apple Watch benefit, those people with the Apple Watch, actually continue to engage. Yes, there is a peak that shows an uplift in engagement and increase in activity, but that sort of flattens off and it remains at remarkably high levels. So we hope that this will continue, and we've changed the behavior of these people for good. And it's the same for every single country to go to. Another point, and this is quite interesting, is not all exercises are created equal. Not all exercises are the same. 10,000 steps versus a 30-minute high-intensity exercise are 2 very, very different things. And there's a lot of clinical evidence that are coming out telling us that high-intensity exercise is a lot better. So we've designed the goals to make it easier for people to achieve their weekly goals if they just do the right forms of exercise, high-intensity exercise. And by changing the goals in that nature, we've actually made people exercise with a higher heart rate. We've seen roughly a 32% increase in the portion of people doing high-intensity exercise. And from an insurance point of view, that is quite a big increase. Another question we often get is, well, many of these behavioral programs target only the already active. So what we actually looked at is our population. We looked at all our clients, and we just classified them by BMI. What you actually see there is that the behavior change that we've observed, the behavior change that I've shown you now in exercise, is actually evident across all risk factors, all BMIs, people who have got a good BMI, people who are slightly over, and especially those people with a high BMI. I think for some strange reason, we saw the biggest change in exercise for people who are quite obese. Another cut that we took to the data is to say, listen, do people with chronic conditions also take part? The answer is yes. People with diabetes saw a 68% increase in physical activity. The bottom right-hand corner is the one I find probably the most interesting, is that smokers actually had the biggest behavior change out of all of these, and you'd think, why would smokers even do that? Fortunately, we don't have the answer for that. Our speculation is that smokers like to have a coffee at the end of every week. Are people getting healthier? So is this model having an impact? I think this is sort of an important question. It's very early stages. You know, if you have an average duration of less than 2 years, if you've done these sort of studies before, if you have an average duration for a policy group of less than 2 years, it's often very difficult to track behavior change, given that you have biometric readings at a discrete point in time. So what we've actually done is we looked at the BMI of these groups of members over time to see if they're actually losing weight and if they're actually getting healthier. And I can tell you that a 3% and a 2% change might not seem a lot to you. From an insurance point of view, that's massive. But compared to the general population, in almost every country where we're seeing BMI actually trending upwards, reversing that risk is quite a big change. Before I go on to the next slide, I want to show you one more interesting thing specifically around this data. I won't take too long, but I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the concept of parkrun. I know we've got a lot of countries here, but there's a event called parkrun. It's not in the Netherlands. I quickly looked online backstage. There's an event called Park Run, which basically happens every Saturday at 8 o'clock in the morning in every single country, where people run a set 5K course, and this course duration is measured. Some of you might have done that. So we actually wanted to see and use our data to see, listen, are we actually making people better athletes? Are people actually getting some sense of achievement using through this program? So what we did is we plugged into Parkrun and we got their data, and we found that people with this benefit are actually running faster. If you're a runner, taking a minute off your 5K time is actually quite a lot of hard work. We actually saw a 13-second per kilometer improvement in the overall time of the members who use this benefit. So people are becoming faster in a sense of achievement. This roughly translates to a 4% increase in cardiovascular fitness, which is huge clinical benefits. The last question, I think, is sort of probably the most important one. I've showed you now that using incentives and a clever design using loss aversion can create massive behavior change across all risk segments, and we're seeing great health improvement already. The question is, does this translate into the insurance savings that can be used to fund these incentives? It is early stages, but we're seeing exactly that. So the first is just a cross-sectional look at the people with the Apple Watch and the benefit and the Vitality Active with the Apple Watch. And we're seeing, just from a health point of view, from the data, that people with the benefit have an 18% lower chronic and healthcare claims cost. From an insurance point of view, especially when I think come to life insurance, where people transact maybe on an annual basis, if that much, we've seen a 12 times increase in digital engagement, and there's massive cross-sell opportunities around that. And then lastly, probably the most important, is we've changed the lapse behavior of people. So lapse is a great source of actuarial surplus, and we've seen on the health and life side, there's a massive decrease in lapses, an 81% decrease compared to the normal population, which is particularly important for a very simple reason, is that traditionally, and you all know this probably from insurance point of view, the healthy leave and the sick stay because the sick need cover, and the healthy see less and less value out of it. Using this benefit, we've effectively reversed that relationship, and what happens now is that the insurance book becomes less risky and less risky over time as the healthy people stay and the sicker people will also stay or potentially leave. So what I hope I've shown you today, and I won't keep you for much longer, is that behavior is very, very important in insurance, and Vitality has developed a model to address this behavior with the use of incentives to change behavior. Technology has been an enabler, and I think through the Vitality Shared Value Insurance model, we've addressed the social need of making people healthier. Thank you very much.